All right, and I'm about to highlight our wonderful guest today. We're gonna boop. Yes. All right. So I didn't get a bio or anything, Miss Caulfield. So I'll let you just kind of tell them who you are and explain who you are. And students, it is like normal. If you have questions and things, you can absolutely put them in the chat. We'll make sure that we bring them back up and let you kind of bring your questions out. But you know, we have with us Miss Caulfield. She is from Partners Against Domestic Violence. And we wanted to just have a conversation as we approach Valentine's Day about relationships, right? I was joking with y'all a little bit earlier, but we definitely want to make sure that y'all are kind of thinking about relationships in the right kind of ways, right? That y'all are thinking about relationships and handling yourselves in relationships in a manner that will be healthy, right? Because what we know is, as much as we are an academic program, each one of you is super smart, is super capable of going to college and getting a great job and living the life of your dreams. And what we know as adults is a lot of times it's not the academic stuff that will trip you up. A lot of times it's decision making, it's friendships or other relationships, and those kind of things can severely alter your life, right? Intentionally or unintentionally. Just being in the wrong relationships, friendships, at the wrong time can really change the path of your life. So we want to kind of have some of those conversations. So I'm going to close my mouth now and turn over to Miss Caulfield.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Like you said, I am a community outreach advocate. I work for Partnership Against Domestic Violence, and we are a organization that is in Fulton and Gwinnett County. And if it's okay with you, I would love to share my screen.
Oh, yes.
Can't
Let me
just
make
share
sure.
my. You let me
Yes,
know.
there we go. You can, I think you should be good now.
All right, sweet.
Oh, wait, Miss Caulfield,
Yeah,
you
you're
muted yourself.
muted.
Yep, you
Mhm.
muted yourself. Too many buttons at the same time. There you go.
Okay,
Yep, we hear
sweet.
you now. Yep.
It wanted to play videos, I guess. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yes.
All right, how about, all right, cool. Well, you let me know if anything changes. Thank you for giving me the update. Okay, so what I was saying was we are going to talk about teen dating violence today. We're going to talk a little bit about healthy relationships. This is a word heavy conversation, so I may be talking a lot. If you guys have any questions, please bother me, do it in the post. I can't really see any faces right now, but so let me know if there's any hands raised or anything like that.
Will
Um,
do. We got you.
yeah, sweet, sweet. All right, so a little bit about our organization. We were founded in 1977. We are the first domestic violence agency in the state of Georgia, fifth in the nation. And our mission is to end the crime of intimate partner violence and empower its survivors. And our vision is a world free of intimate partner violence, which is fantastic. So, first things first, I want to ask, what do you all think of when you think of teen dating violence? You can put it in the chat, or you can put it, you can unmute.
Go ahead, Prince. What do you think of?
Like abuse or only wanting a person for sexual relations.
Okay.
You got it. What else?
Somebody said in the chat, getting hit or physical abuse. That's what Ivy said. We have another
Mental
student in the
abuse?
chat that says verbal, emotional, mental, physical violence.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
relationships with peer pressure from partners. We have peer pressure from partners. Anybody else? What do you think about when you hear so mental abuse, just being toxic? Somebody said toxic, just toxicness.
Oh yeah, just toxic.
Isolating from friends. We have in the chat.
Amazing. All right, y'all are doing a fantastic job so far, getting all of my keywords. All of that is considered dating violence. So already on a right track. So like I mentioned, first half, we're going to talk about dating violence, and just, of course, little trigger warning. This is sensitive conversation. And then afterwards, we're going to talk about healthy relationships.
Mhm.
All right. So dating violence is a pattern of controlling and abusive behaviors that someone uses against their intimate partner. There's a lot of misconceptions of what dating violence looks like. Like we mentioned, sometimes people feel like it's just a woman's problem or it only affects a certain group of people. But we know that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience some form of intimate partner violence in their lifetime. So that's a huge statistic. It's going to affect at least someone that you know. So it's very important that we're having this conversation today, that we are knowing that it can happen to anyone. And it also can happen in any relationship. So while we're talking about these things, think about your friendships, think about relationships that are not just intimate partner, but other relationships too, and kind of recognize these warning signs. All right, so a little bit about statistics. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we know that nearly 20% of female high school students, 13% of male high school students report being physically or sexually abused by a dating partner. We know that 26% of teens in relationships were likely to be victim of cyber dating abuse. Females are twice as likely to be victims as males. Now, I will say, I think in dating violence over the internet, I think men and women are targeted in different ways. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. I believe both populations are really affected by digital abuse. Next, 8 out of 10 girls who have been physically abused in their dating relationships continue to date their abuser. There's a lot of reasons why someone may even realize they're in an unhealthy relationship, but not be ready to leave. So we'll talk about those barriers as well. And then we know 1 in 5 teens who have been in a relationship said that a boyfriend threatened violence or self-harm if presented with a breakup. We know that the breakup and afterwards is actually the most dangerous time in any relationship. So it's really important that we talk about, when breaking up, what that looks like, and, how to keep yourself safe and how to make those best decisions. All right, so we mentioned a lot of different types of abuse, and I'm going to go into a couple of these. We know that sexual abuse is sexual activity without willing, active, and unimpaired consent. We're going to talk about consent a little bit later on. Emotional, verbal abuse. So those are non-physical damaging behaviors. Those keywords that we heard earlier on: peer pressure, humiliation, manipulation, those things that people can do to make you feel as though you're going crazy. Next one is stalking, being repeatedly watched, followed, monitored, or harassed. Physical abuse, any intentional use of physical touch to cause fear, injury, or assert control. Even the threat of physical violence is considered physical abuse. Next is financial abuse. That's exerting power and control through your finances. So when someone tells you what you can spend your money on, how you spend your money, when you work, where you work, really controlling those financial decisions on your behalf. And then digital abuse, using technology to bully, stalk, threaten, or intimidate. All right, so like we mentioned, power and control, teen dating violence is about power and control. So this is the wheel that we talked about, that this is going to be the different tactics that someone's going to use in order to gain control over their partner. So for example, someone mentioned peer pressure. That's, threatening to expose someone's weakness, saying you're going to lose all your friends if you don't do as I say, or you're not listening to me. Really that person who's going to use the threat of others to keep you where you're at. Anger, emotional abuse. So that's going to be like humiliation, telling lies. That's a manipulation, getting really angry and using anger to cause fear, assert control, playing mind games. That's really where that toxic behavior comes in. So the next one is going to be using social status. So that's when a abusive partner tends to value themselves over their partner and really say that my day-to-day is more important than yours. So, we're going to do what I want to do. We're going to prioritize my own needs, and we're not going to really listen to yours. Someone that's using social status is going to make all of the decisions and treat the other person like less than, or like a servant or a child, someone who can't really make any decisions. And they may even use their social status as being popular to say, if you don't date me, you're going to lose all your friends, or you're never going to be popular, no one's going to like you anymore. So just really using that over someone else. Next is the threats and intimidation. So raising a fist, but not swinging, destroying objects, destroying your phone, throwing things, punching walls. All of these things are the threat of violence, and that is still considered physical abuse. So it's really important to not allow these kind of behaviors. It's not okay for someone to do these kind of things, because even if it's, someone could argue, well, they didn't actually hurt you. No, but they are using this tactic to control you and to make you feel fearful. So threats and intimidation is a really big thing to look out for. Next is sexual coercion. So, of course, someone making sexual advances without someone else's consent, comparing them to past partners, saying that they're not good enough, making them feel like they have to do things in order to prove themselves. All of that is kind of under sexual coercion. And then isolation and exclusion. So, all right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second. Okay, so how often do you all think dating partners should see each other?
Oh, that's a good question.
Me?
Maybe once a week.
Once a week. All right, that's a good answer. All right, I see. What is coercion? So that's when someone makes you, makes you do something that you may not want to do. They're going to use tactics to do that. They're going to use guilting you. They're going to say pretty please. They're going to say things to make you go back on your answer of no. Someone who's coercing you into doing something else. So twice a week. All right, so the bottom line here is that it's all up to that couple, right? As long as they're on the same page and there's not someone who is more, I want to see you all the time, and I want you to be the only friends I have. I want to, be on FaceTime all night. Basically, someone that is demanding too much of your time, and if it's uneven. So as long as it's on the same page, we're good. Because what the issue here is that we see that isolation. That's the last thing on the power and control wheel, which is going to be you feeling as though you can't talk to your friends anymore. They're going to say things like, I just don't like the way your friends talk about me. You shouldn't hang out with them anymore. All right, so I'm not hanging out with my friends anymore. Go over to your family's house and they say, well, your mom gave me a dirty look last time I saw them. So let's just not go to your parents' house. Let's just hang out at my friend's house, or we'll just hang out at my house going forward. Okay, so we're not talking to our friends, we're not talking to our parents, and all we have to rely on is that one person. So an abusive partner is going to get you to really rely on them for social needs, emotional needs, physical needs, anything, to make you feel as though you just have them. So leaving them can be really difficult. That can be a big barrier when you feel like you really need them. All right, how are we doing so far? Any questions?
We don't have many questions in the chat, but I am really enjoying this because some of the statistics are shocking to me. I would like to hear more about specifically cyber dating abuse, because I'm not familiar with the term of cyber dating abuse.
I've got like a 29-page presentation where I'm like, let me see if I can answer some questions. I want to use this time best to our abilities. So if you got questions and stuff, that sounds great. So definitely, we're absolutely going to talk about cyber dating abuse. And then Prince, I see you have your hand up.
So you said like abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
does the abuse consider like you playing with the perfect particular female that you're with? Does like play fighting, does that count as abuse?
So I say that's a fine line, right? We have to see, right? Because as long as you know that person is on the same page as you, that they're also play fighting, that they're giggling, this is something great. But I also recommend having some kind of safe word. Sometimes no, or stop can still be feeling like play fighting. So if you got to have like a macaroni stop kind of thing to really take you out of the moment, just so that way it's never, someone feels like they've had enough. Sometimes roughhousing can be a lot. So, I think just especially if it's a girlfriend or partner, good friend, you know, have a safe word, make sure they're okay with it. But I think as long as it's consensual, then have fun. What else? Okay, so I see abuse can be mental. Absolutely. We see people, there's this term called gaslighting. Has anyone heard of that one before? I believe it if you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
So gaslighting is when someone makes you feel as though your reality is not true. So they're going to use different tactics. They're going to minimize your argument. You know, it's not a big deal. I don't know why you're getting so upset over something like that. You know, not taking your feelings into consideration. They're going to blame you, say, you know, it's your fault that I got upset in the first place. You know, I never would have done those things if you didn't instigate it. Taking the blame off them and putting it on you, not holding themselves accountable. So those are some really important things to look out for. But absolutely, abuse can and is mental abuse. And then we see, yeah, make it about themselves. You know, I just feel this way. You know, it's important in situations. We're going to talk about conflict management as well. So that's a big part of, you know, working through things. I think it's a huge life skill. All right. Any other questions?
No, not right now.
All right, sweet. See if it'll just go back.
I think you muted again, Miss Caulfield. Okay. That share button and that mute button, but they're giving you. Okay. We're good.
All right, good stuff. No worries. All right, thank you for letting me know. So this is kind of the same thing I was just talking about. They deny, deflect responsibility. They're going to blame so that it's your fault. So if this is happening in relationships, you may feel as though you're making excuses for your partner behavior. You may feel as though you can't really be honest with them anymore because you know that a big argument's going to come out of nothing. So you may feel like, you know, you're making excuses, you're withholding information, and like honesty can't really be a thing because of this barrier. So when we start realizing we're not being honest with our partners, you know, that could be a big deal. And then you must be a very open person, more open and relaxed, and maybe you're feeling really closed off. All right, so warning signs. This person may get very quick to anger, 0 to 100 out of nowhere. They are very possessive or jealous. They'll say things like, you know, I only decide what you wear because I love you so much. Or I only decide what you can eat because, you know, I just care about you. Using these controlling behaviors as a, you know, as framed as jealousy or framed as love. So this person is going to use jealousy in order to control you further. This person may be a smooth talker or a charmer. They are maybe act one way in a group of people and then completely different behind closed doors. And it can be really difficult to be believed because people are like, well, they're so great. I don't know what you're talking about. You mean they're abusive? But a lot of times we see this kind of two-face of, you know, acting one way around friends and one way behind closed doors. This person may demand things to get serious very early on. You know, be careful of those people that are, I love you on week one. They are like saying, you know, we're going to go to the same college. We're going to move in together. You know, I can't wait to do all these things with you. I think it's important that relationships build over time. And like we have friends that we get to know and we start trusting, we start telling secrets, and it's love that grows. So I think it's important to let relationships develop and be careful of a person that feels like they need to get things to be very serious early on. And then abuse is something that, you know, we learn relationships from our parents first. So a person that has been abused before may end up becoming an abuser later on in life if intervention doesn't happen, which is very common. So it's just important to look out for those type of people who have experienced abuse in the past. Doesn't mean that they're going to have those in the future, but like I said, a lot of times we learn relationships from our parents, and sometimes we say, well, that's just the way things are, when we may have seen unhealthy things. All right, so warning signs in someone that we're caring about that may be a victim of dating violence. This person is experiencing mood swings, changes in personality, eating, sleeping habits. Big one is constantly thinking or worrying about their partner. They feel like they can't make a decision without them. They always have to text them to check in. And like I mentioned, the decision making, like the abuser will make all of the decisions in relationship and not really give that person any control. So it could be really hard for that person to make any kind of decision, even when they're not with that person, even if they're just with friends or by themselves, they may have a hard time. Next is avoiding friends, sudden changes in appearance, unexplained injuries, and then changes in school performance or activities. Now, one or two of these things are super normal teenage stuff. But if you're noticing a couple of these things, that's when we're going to want to start reaching out to our friend and seeing how we can help. Are we doing okay so far?
Absolutely.
All right, good stuff. All right, so barriers, like I mentioned.
Oh,
go for it.
Okay.
So you can be abused by your friend? Is what you're trying to say?
I'm absolutely saying that. Our friends sometimes ask too much of us. Sometimes our friends, have unhealthy boundaries. And I think it is very possible for our friends to be taking advantage of us. It's important to watch out for those kind of things.
Someone also, and I know we'll probably get to it a little bit later. So, someone in the chat also said, any advice you have for like how to leave toxic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose that is relationships and friendships. So I know we'll get to it, but I just didn't want it to get lost in the chat.
I appreciate it. All right. So, like I mentioned, risk of violence at the highest at the end of relationship and after. So, here are some barriers that, like I mentioned, someone could know they're in an unhealthy relationship, but they may still decide to stay. So, for one reason, they love that person, right? They love the way things were. They think we can just get back to the way things used to be. It'll all be okay. But we know that dating abuse is a cycle. And it is something that happens again and again and again. And so, even if we feel like we're in a good season, things are going okay, if dating violence does happen and it repeats itself. So, a lot of times we get in that cycle of, well, we love them, we're going to hold out until things get better. But a lot of times, it can be really difficult for things to get better. And that can be really challenging. So fear, right? What happens after life without this person? We imagine our whole lives with our partner. So it can be really challenging to think what would happen if I'm not dating this person? Will I lose my friends? Will I be able to, still be on, the same team as them or work with them on school projects? That can be really challenging. Next is effects on breakup on our friends' family. Whether they know it or not, our friends, our parents, our community, they put pressure on us to stay in relationships. You all look so good together. Your parents talk about how good you guys are, but that could be really hard. You don't want to disappoint them. You don't want to let them down by breaking up with them. So that could be a reason why someone decides to stay. Next is dating and breakup and experience. Like we mentioned, it is hard to know what is the right time to, let's have a conversation, let's work this out, let's figure this out and move on. And when is it the right time to know maybe we're just not compatible and maybe we are not good for each other and maybe we should end things. And that's a fine line that even adults struggle with. So it's just something that comes with time. It comes with trusting your gut. So that can be a reason why someone may decide to stay, is they don't know the right way to break up with someone. Next is legal or policy barriers. Under the age of 18, you can get a temporary protective order. You just need an adult's help to do so. So there are ways that you can navigate the system, but still trying to get help from, police or court, that can be a really scary thing. So, people may be hesitant to reach out. Next is LGBTQ factors. We know that people that are LGBTQ experience dating violence twice as likely as heterosexual couples. So it is so important that we're creating space for that group to know that there is help, there is resources. But a lot of times we see, if you break up with me, I'm going to out you to your parents, or I'm going to use this against you. They're going to say things like that in order to keep you stationed in the relationship. So it's important that we're mentioning that. And next is that isolation we mentioned. You're not trusting your friends, you're not trusting your family. All you have to rely on is that one person. It can be really hard to let that person go if you feel like all you have is them. So that's my best advice, is make sure that you guys are having different friends you can go to, making sure that, it's okay not to have that many friends, but having, someone that you can go to, making sure that there's balance in your life, that you're not investing all of your time and energy just into one person, because it's important to have different people in your life for different things. All right, so this is how we help someone that's been going through this. This is how we talk to a friend. So first of all, I always recommend this conversation happen in person, because things get lost in text messages and even through FaceTime. Maybe we're like, there's ways that you can hide it or maybe not seem as genuine. So I always recommend these conversations happen in person. What you want to do is you don't want to ask them a lot of yes or no questions or feel like you have to know all the answers. You don't want to be judgmental or make them feel stupid or ashamed. The big one is that you don't want to force them to make a lot of decisions, because what we see a lot of, we see our friends saying, that person is so bad for you, leave them. I don't know why you're still with them. They're terrible for you, dump them. But like we mentioned, there's a ton of barriers why someone may continue to date that person. So, if you're my friend, you're telling me dump them, I'm going to be like, well, you have a really strong stance. I'm not going to go to you in the future for help, because I already know your stance. I already know what you're going to say. You're not really here to support me. So that's something that may go through someone's mind. So I always recommend just respect their decisions, help them, but let them know you're here for them either way. And don't underestimate the abuse if someone does decide to stay. So what I do recommend is let them know your concerns. I don't have it on here, but the best thing you can do is focus on the behavior, not the person. So use that power and control wheel. I've noticed that they have humiliated you in public a couple of times. And when that happens, you get very upset. Do you want to talk about that? I'm concerned. So being able to focus on the behavior instead of the person helps that person understand that I don't deserve this, instead of I don't deserve a partner. So important to use that kind of language. Very important to let them, other people that they can talk to, especially another adult, another counselor, a friend's parent, community advocates, anyone. Because a lot of times these situations, these relationships, they thrive in silence, because they feel like, if I don't say anything, it's not anyone else's business. I'm just going to get away with it. So being able to reach out and tell people what's going on is going to be very helpful. Let them know that you're available. If they want to talk to you, always listen to what they have to say. Try not to interrupt them. Just let them say what they need to say and help them make the choice. But the big thing is don't make that choice for them. And then remind them that their past does not define them, and create a safety plan. So like we mentioned in those kind of toxic relationships, in a breakup, like we know what to do in case of a fire, we also create a safety plan for that same reason. Because in a moment of crisis, in the moment of confusion or fear or panic, logic is going out the door, and all we're focusing on is that moment. So having a plan of action can give a survivor the sense of, okay, I can do what I need to do. They're going to feel more confident. So safety plans include, plan of action. If you're going to break up with someone, tell your friend, hey, I'm going to break up with them between this hour and this hour. I'm going to text you, this sentence when it's done. And if I don't text you that sentence, I need you to come check on me. And if the lights are off, I need you to call 911. So having that plan of action just in case of an emergency is so important. So writing down those phone numbers of people you can call, the safe addresses, safe people, things like that are going to be really important to a safety plan. All right. So we talked a lot about dating violence. Any questions here? Okay, so I do see a good one. What if you're toxic, obsessive one? So I think in that one, it's okay. because sometimes we don't know relationships, we're just learning. And I'll even share, I was the obsessive one when I first started dating. I was the person who couldn't let the other person out of my sight. And in honesty, that was a me problem, because it's important to have other people in your life that you can go to. It's important to let, your partner have their own hobbies, their own friends, their own activities that they do. So I think, if you're feeling like, oh, I'm toxic and I just really love them a lot, that can be a really good thing. But I also think it's an injustice to yourself, because you deserve time and energy poured into you. You deserve to focus on your hobbies, your hopes and dreams. So I think it's about finding balance, and it's about self-reflecting to see, am I being controlling? Am I giving this person their space when they ask for it? Am I respecting their decisions when they tell me no? Those are some important things to think about. All right, what
So,
else?
so I have a couple of people that I won't out at all, but I have a couple of people that asked some different things. One said they want to make sure that we talk about leaving toxic friendships as well as toxic, love relationships. But they said it's difficult sometimes because you don't interact with the people necessarily a lot, but whenever you do interact with them, it's because they need stuff. And so it's hard to kind of get rid of them because they aren't kind of asking a lot of you, but it's just every time they're around, they're asking for something.
Oof.
And another person just said, and I'll let you kind of respond to both. Someone said, within a toxic relationship or relationship period, why is it so important to have better understandings of communication? So why is it important to kind of create communication norms in relationships, toxic and otherwise?
Amazing. Great questions. Thank you guys for taking this subject seriously and asking thoughtful questions. This is such a breath of fresh air. Okay, so the first one, we talked about leaving toxic friendships. That's tough. Always really difficult. But key here is having good boundaries. And we're going to talk about boundaries as well, but it's important to be able to tell people no, because sometimes we're not available. Sometimes we have to focus on other things. And sometimes we don't want to cross that line. Let's say we have a friend who always asks for money and never repays the favor. Maybe you feel like you're the friend that's always giving and never receiving. And that's not fair to you. So I think setting good boundaries there is going to be really important, which means, those are things that you're willing to do and things that you're not willing to do. And I get sometimes we feel guilt, when our friends come to us with problems, but we have to remember, my friend said this, I love this. You owe someone your honesty. You do not owe them your happiness. So sometimes you got to be upfront with people. Sometimes you got to tell them, hey, I'm not able to help you here. Maybe I'm not the best person. Here's a resource. Maybe reach out to someone else. I'm really not going to be available. Because it's important to prioritize yourself, especially if you feel like you are giving and not receiving. So I recommend, letting that person know what your boundaries are, really upholding them. So, hey, I, don't really, sometimes friendship have breakups too. You can say, I don't think we should hang out anymore because of this. And it's okay to let people go from your life that are no longer serving you. And that can be really hard if you've been friends with someone a long time. So, but there's also, you got to prioritize yourself. We're not, it's important to have boundaries. So if anything more specific on that, let me know, because that's a loaded question, but that's what I got for right now.
And we got a couple of, I'm with you, Ms. Caulfield. Guys, I'm really impressed. I'm happy with the questions y'all are asking and the seriousness with which we're taking the conversation. I appreciate y'all. So a couple of things are in the chat. I will read first the one that kind of said to everyone, but I have a few that sent me direct messages as well. So they said, do you believe people can change their toxic traits if it's communicated properly? I will let you start with that one.
I'll start with that one. Yes, absolutely. We're all capable of great change. Absolutely. And if you're recognizing these things in yourself, it's normal.
I think we're all capable of toxicity too. Just in the right situation. So, right.
Like I said, I used to be the obsessive one. I used to be so upset when my boyfriend chose to hang out with his friends and not me. And I'd be like, you hate me. I was like, that's it. You just hate me. But realizing that he gets something out of his friends, he gets something out of me, he gets something out of his family. We have lots of room to love a lot of people. And I think just accepting that, that helped me a ton. It's okay. If you're saying you're not toxic, you should look in it, because everyone's got their things, right? We're all little.
We all have our things. Yes.
We all have our things. Okay, so yes, I do think that communication is one of the most important things you can do in a relationship. It's important to be vulnerable. It's important to listen to someone when they're vulnerable. If you feel like there's something going on that you need to communicate with that person, don't bottle it up. Tell them. Because we're not mind readers. A lot of times in relationship, it's always like, what did that text mean? Or I have no idea what they said something cryptic, or, I'm not getting through to them. It's really important to create a environment where you can talk about these things. We're being honest with one another. We're listening to what the other person has to say. And the goal is to understand and to figure out how to solve the problem, right? It's not me versus you. But we'll get into more communication. Any other questions?
So someone asked, I can't fix it. Ask her, how do you leave a toxic relationship when you're constantly feel like you're being manipulated? Or when people say stuff like, if you love me, then you wouldn't do this or that. Or if you leave me alone, then we can't be friends anymore. And then you have people that always play the victim. And I just don't know how to approach a person like that, like how to start the conversation. That's what somebody is saying.
I hear you. And I just want to say, that's not love. Love is when you respect someone. Love is when you give them space when they ask for it. Love is when, it doesn't have those kind of conditions. So if someone's treating you like that, they're not doing it out of love. They're doing it out of controlling. So leaving those situations, that's a form of grief, a form of loss. Like, those can be really difficult things to go through. So I want to validate that, that's a really hard thing to go through. But I will say, the best things that you can do is evaluate what you want out of life, what you want out of your friends. Who are you looking for in a friend? And if your friends aren't meeting those kind of values, then it's time to start taking a step back. So that could look like, taking a break from responding to texts all the time, letting them know that you need some space, giving some space to talk about things, maybe investing into yourself. Because a lot of times when we leave friends, we feel lonely. But that just means you get more time to figure out who you are, what you want, get the new hobby, join that new gym, things like that, where, you're investing into yourself and healing from, what your friends have gone through. So take your time away, take space, set boundaries, because some people are worthy of being our friends, but they need to learn some boundaries. So it's really important to, communicate your feelings toward your friends. If you're feeling like, I just need to not be friends with this person, it could be as forward as, hey, I need some space, or, I don't feel like this friendship's what it was. Having those hard conversations. And unfortunately for those, there isn't really an easy way out. It's being really honest with yourself and then being honest with others.
Okay. Okay, I got one more question. Someone said, so in a relationship, what if a person is really guarded to you, but you want them to feel more comfortable, expressing things to you? Should you be patient and wait? Like, how do you kind of help that comfort level rise with a partner?
Yeah, that's patient wait is great. Because some people are not very comfortable sharing intimate things right off the front, but you can always say, this is something I really value, is honesty, is vulnerability. I understand that can be very difficult for a lot of people. So I think, meeting them where they're at, seeing the situation from their point of view, maybe they revealed something to you that you would have told anyone, but they haven't told anyone. So respecting that, when they do share, thank you for sharing that with me, creating that trust, because with trust comes, in more intimate relationships, we're going to be able to have those conversations. So I would focus on building the trust, and that, that connection and communication will come. I did get a DM So I just want to say, so someone had mentioned, when we hear those phrases, you're too emotional, are you too sensitive, when you're expressing your emotions, that can be a form of manipulation. That's true. So that is a form, because when someone tells you how they're feeling, you should really take it seriously. If they're coming with you saying, this is how I'm feeling, even if it wasn't your intention, even if you don't know why they're feeling that way, if there's someone's coming to you with their feelings, you have to see it and you have to say, okay, wow, I didn't realize that. I never meant to hurt you. That's okay. It's okay to feel a little hurt yourself. Feelings are normal. We just have to make sure we're taking them seriously. So how do you address that? Yeah, I mean, if you feel like someone's not taking you seriously, I think it's important to say, my emotions are valid, and I would appreciate you if you take them seriously and really try to help them understand. But if there's someone that's not going to take you seriously, they're not going to listen when you're coming to them with a problem, they're not a good friend. And maybe that's not someone that you should have in your life, because it's really important that we're listening to our friends. We're hearing them when they tell us things, because yeah, we can get hurt when if I hurt a friend, I'm going to be pretty sad about it. I may even not understand at all. But the goal is to try to understand, right? We're just human. We make mistakes all the time. So it's important to be vulnerable about these kind of things. Know that these are tough questions. So I'm sorry I'm not answering them as well as I would love to, but hopefully we're starting the conversation.
I just love the dialogue. And so I really appreciate you. Someone asked, do you have any suggestions on how to set, healthy boundaries?
Yes, and I have it in my presentation, so I will get back to that. All right, so I did get a, what if that's your parents? Unhealthy boundaries with parents happen.
Yeah.
And I think there is a power imbalance, right? Because parents have to make those tough decisions. Sometimes we have to do things that our parents say that we don't want to. But I think there should be some balance between decision making, right? Maybe they say we have to spend all day Sunday cleaning. Okay. If I do Sunday all day cleaning, that means next Saturday I get to go out with my friends. Finding some balance that's fair is important. Of course, we have to listen to our parents, and sometimes we feel like they're unfair, but finding some way to negotiate, some way to compromise, and if they're really not seeing how you're feeling, then maybe it's a good idea to reach out to another adult that you trust. Mr. Kenny, do you have any other thoughts on that? What happens if it's your parents?
No, I think you're spot on, right? I do understand that some of our students absolutely have parents that don't make those conversations easy, right? Because different parents, kind of run their houses differently. But I think your suggestion is exactly what needs to happen. Like sometimes, reaching out to another adult, especially an adult that your parent values, right?
Right.
And so if you have, a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, or someone like that, they can kind of help with that conversation. Now, what I will say to our students is make sure that you're handling your business while you're negotiating, right? Because just in life in general, you don't want to negotiate when you haven't done your end of whatever the bargain is, right? And so, as Ms. Caulfield said, if your mother is just asking you to, make your bed and wash the dishes, you don't necessarily want to start the conversation with, but you never let me go out with my friends. Go ahead and
Right.
make the bed and wash the dishes, and then say, hey, Mom, this weekend, now that my bed has been made for 5 days in a row, can I go, somewhere with my friends? You want to make sure that you're kind of doing what you need to do. Hold up your end of the bargain with your parents.
All right, so I want to go back to the presentation. I have a couple of those boundary slides that I want to get to before we run out. If we need to stay a little bit later because conversation's going good, I'm fine with that. So,
Yay, that works.
All right, bet. Okay, so we're going to move on to healthy relationships. Just because we're running close on time, take a look at this, take a picture of it if you want. This is what I find is the most important things in a healthy relationship. Right up top, effective communication. We're openly, honestly talking about what we both want, need to have a good relationship. Express boundaries, which we're going to get into. Shared power, so equal commitment, 50-50, right? One person's not overpowering the other, and one person's not putting in any effort, right? It's equal balance in all things. And that's also, sharing in the decision making process. So, we do what they want to do, we do what I want to do, there's a balance. Respect, so important. Respecting, when they tell you no, respecting when they want to challenge you. It's important to have differences and know that it's okay. And then self-esteem, you need someone that lifts you up, that makes you feel like a good person, that makes you feel like the best version of yourself. And you want to do that same for your partner, right? Lift them up, make them feel like all their dreams are going to come true. It's really important to have a good self-esteem in all relationships. Okay, so, all right, we have consent here. Take a picture of this one as well. Consent is freely given. That is not under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or saying that you owe them, or that, feeling manipulated into it, coerced. It is given on your own free will. It's reversible. So even if you have had relations in the past, or that you're almost done to finishing, it can be taken away. At any time, someone can say, I'm not comfortable anymore and I want to stop. I is informed. So we're talking about birth control. We're talking about whether or not we're using condoms. We're talking about any STIs. We're making sure we're having these conversations before we get to doing anything. Next is enthusiastic. You're looking for someone who's actively engaged, really excited to be here. You feel the confidence. What you don't look for is nervousness, or someone who's very passive, or not really engaging. They're just maybe allowing things to happen. That is not consent. You're looking for enthusiasm. And next is specific. So just because we agree to one thing doesn't mean that you agree to others. So it's really important to talk about these things along the way and making sure we're checking in. This one's loaded. Any questions here? All right. Okay, so boundaries. This is the one that I wanted to get to. I have a couple of things to say about this. So boundaries are personal limits and rules that we set for ourselves within relationships. So a person with healthy boundaries can say no to others when they want to, but they're also comfortable opening themselves up to intimacy and close relationships. So it's good to have the balance. No to say no when you're uncomfortable, but also say, I've never tried that before. Let me try something new. Or, I don't usually go out on the weekends, but I'm feeling good. Let's try something new. It's good to have that balance. So first, we'll talk about that physical boundaries. That's that person that has, given me my bubble, respect the bubble. It's important to know what the appropriateness of physical touch. So, maybe in class, it's not a good idea to hold your girlfriend's hand, or, be really intimate. But if you guys are in a better space, then that's okay. Also, same thing with your boss. You may not hug them. You may give them a handshake. Knowing what's appropriate in different situations is important. And also just communicating with your partner. Not everyone's a touchy-feely person, and some people need touchy-feely. So making sure that you're compatible with your partner, that, if you're someone that maybe you guys are opposites, giving and taking a little bit to find a good balance. All right, emotional boundaries. This was a big one. So this refers to a person's feelings. There's so often that we get into situations where we've had a terrible day. All I need is just to zonk out on the couch and relax because it's been such a terrible day. Your friend calls you up and was like, let me tell you about my awful day. All this has happened. And you're like, I would love to be here for you, but I'm exhausted and I need to take a break. So prioritizing your feelings, making sure that you are creating boundaries when needed. Hey, I want to listen to your story, but I'm also zonked. Maybe we can plan something for the weekend and we can have that time to talk about it then, because sometimes it's not always great, not always the moment. So prioritizing your feelings, making sure someone's not discussing things that are, traumatic or really challenging for you, and just, finding that balance. Emotional boundaries are violated when someone criticizes, belittles, or invalidates another person's feelings. Digital boundaries. It is okay. I'm going to say something that you guys are going to find controversial. It's okay to have boundaries over your phone. You do not have to share your password. You do not have to go through other people's phones. It's okay to have privacy online. because privacy is something that we're getting less and less of. So finding that balance. Hey, it's cool if you follow me on social media, and like look at my photos, like that's fine, but it's not okay to look at my text. Those are private. It's okay to have private conversations. If you feel like someone is, cheating on you, or you feel the need to look, that is an important conversation that you need to have with that person. And honesty is just really important here. So making sure that, we're having digital boundaries. All right, last one here is time boundaries. So this is how we use our time. You guys are busy people. You got school, friends, family, friendships, relationships, hobbies, me time. It's so important to create time for everything that you have to do in your life. Scheduling time for those responsibilities, also scheduling time for friendships, for relationships. And time boundaries are violated when another person demands too much of another person's time. So making sure we're finding the balance. That's all about boundaries are, is knowing what your needs and wants are and how to communicate that to other people. All right, so that's a big one on that. How are we doing?
We are well. I have a few more questions that popped in. And
all right, we'll stop there for a second. Let's do the
right.
questions.
Okay. So someone asked, what do you do if you try to set boundaries, but people don't really respect your boundaries and you don't really know how to handle it because you just kind of let things slide consistently? I'll let you do that one first.
Yeah. So let's say that's hard, because what that means is that maybe you have something that's called porous boundaries, which means you let things slide, it's okay. And unfortunately, that does get into people pleasing. You may feel like people walk all over you, and that could be a really difficult thing. So by strengthening your boundaries, which means, hey, I'm not comfortable with doing this thing. If you cannot respect this, then this is what will happen. So I really need space to deal with something. If you can't respect this, then we're not gonna talk anymore. So please respect my boundary, and having that space. So boundaries, you have to communicate them. And if other people aren't respecting them, then maybe they're not the best friends, or maybe really have that sit down conversation. This is really bothering me, and I want you to know that this is not something that I take lightly. This is something that is really serious, and a good friend will listen, and a good friend will understand. So know that you're worth people to respect you.
You also have to hold on to those boundaries yourself, right? And so guys, when you set those boundaries, and I'm not saying this to minimize it or make it sound easy, because it is not, but when you set boundaries, you have to try to maintain them even in your moments of weakness. And we all have kind of those moments of weakness. We all have people in our lives that we're like, they keep doing this, they keep hurting me, and I don't want to deal with them anymore. And then we get bored or we get lonely, and we pick up the phone and we start that conversation. And so setting the boundaries is important, but also making sure that you remind yourself of why you're setting the boundaries. Like, don't forget, like, well, I'm really hurt, I'm really upset, and then 3 days later, like you said, I let it slide because I missed the companionship, right? So we got to be careful about that kind of stuff too. Okay, another question that I got, and this is okay. So they said, someone on the call is dealing with somebody that ascribes a lot of personality traits to them that they don't feel like are their personality traits. So they said someone is saying to them, you're obsessed with me, or you're in love with me, or we're gonna get married, or are they saying they're accusing the person of being clingy, even though the person doesn't feel like they're being clingy, or nobody else feels like they're being clingy. And so they said they don't really know how to deal with, this person kind of ascribing these things to them.
So that's tough, right? Because at one point, take that second to say, okay, am I doing those things? Is that something that is going on? And then maybe if you're still confused, ask them for examples, ask them for what they mean by this. Get more specific, because you're too clingy. What does that mean? Tell me, how am I being too clingy? Am I not giving you enough space? Maybe say, I would like to hang out more often than we are. how can we meet that, right? It's about that compromise. So I would ask them to get specific and see what's really going on. But if you're feeling like, they are like pushing too much, saying, I just don't want to hang out with you, or, I only want to see you when I feel like it, maybe that's someone that's not respecting you or not really valuing you. And that can be hard too. So I would definitely have that conversation go further. Don't leave it just at that. We need specifics. We need to know, how can we work together to find a good compromise. It is always you and your partner against a problem, not you against your partner. You're working together to find a common goal. So if that person wants to be with you, they'll tell you, how we can make this work.
That is amazing advice. Thank you so much for that. And I hope y'all caught kind of really what she is saying, because again, if your partner is telling you, even in that scenario, if your partner is saying to you, you are all of these problems, but they have no solutions for the problem, and they really aren't being direct with you about what the problem is, then that might be the kind of relationship that you really need to assess if it's healthy for you to be in, right? Because what you don't want is to be in a situation where you're constantly changing yourself to appease another person, and you don't even know what the target is that you're aiming at, right? And sometimes people will manipulate you in that way. So now they have you wearing different clothes and talking different and saying all and doing all of this stuff, and you don't even really know what you're aiming at the end of the day. You're just trying to get somebody happy who sometimes at y'all age doesn't even know what will make them happy. So sometimes people will give you a list of hoops to jump through, and you'll jump through all of those hoops, and at the end of the day, they're still not happy, because ultimately it was never about you. It was about deficiencies that they had. So you'll be careful about that.
Just prioritize yourself. You work on yourself and you are making yourself happy, you are going to attract people that are like you, that are also wanting to make themselves happy. So, we don't live for other people here. We live for ourselves, and our partners support us in our good selves, All right, what else?
Any other questions? That's the last thing I had in the chat. Any other questions? You guys feel free to put something in the chat if you have more questions.
Y'all are doing really great. Thank you for taking this seriously, and feel free to have me back so we can continue this conversation.
We might have to, because I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm so glad that the students have so many questions. Anybody else with any? Oh, okay.
Faiza has a quick question.
Yes, a quick question. You can unmute yourself if you want to, Faiza.
So, what if you got out of a toxic relationship, a relationship you didn't like, but that person they got the relationship with is friends with your friends, so you keep seeing them and seeing them either way?
That's tough. That's a really valid thing that happens a lot. And so in that, I would say, give yourself grace, because sometimes things are going to happen. It's going to hurt. You're going to see them. You're going to be reminded. Maybe you still love these friends. You don't want to lose these friends. So tell those friends that you really care about how you're feeling. If you want to continue those friendships, let them know. You can still, there doesn't have to be sides, after a breakup. You can still be friends with both people, just in different ways. So communicate to those people that you want to be friends with, saying, hey, I know we broke up, but I still want to be friends. Is that something that you would want? Or if you feel like you don't want to be friends with them anymore, you keep seeing them all the time, I would just try to find something else, right? A distraction. Make friends in those classes that you see them at, talk to someone new, try to open yourself up to new friend groups, because that can be a huge loss, losing friends, through a breakup. So, I would recommend, relying on other people that, will be there for you, making new friends, investing into yourself. Cause that's a tough thing. And it's just a tough thing.
It can be, and it actually plays back into something Ms. Caulfield was saying earlier. So absolutely, with those mutual friends, like those friends of relationship, be open and honest with them, right? Because what you don't want is to allow yourself to feel like you have to be isolated because you kind of gave all of your friends away to your former partner. Like you don't want to feel like, well, me and my partner were friends with these 10 people, and now we broke up, and 9 of them are friends with my partner, and now I only have
No,
one friend. So you don't want to isolate yourself in that way. So speak to that friend group and kind of just say like, hey, I don't, have any problem with y'all. Like I value these relationships, even absent of the other relationship. Mrs. Stokes, I see your hand up. You want to add, Mrs. Stokes?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Ms. Caroline, you've done an amazing and fantastic job. I always enjoy having PDADV to come out and do our presentation. I just wanted to ask if you can expound just a little bit. Our program, not sure if you're familiar, but it is a college kind of prep program. So a lot of our students on the call are kind of going through the journey and path of enrolling in post-secondary education. And so you mentioned earlier in the presentation about how relationships can coerce friends or relationships on where, which colleges to go to, or, go to the college that I'm going to, or you shouldn't go to college, you should stay back with me. And can you just expound a little more on what that kind of looks like, and maybe some suggestions for our students as to how to handle that? Because we do from time to time have students who will say they will not select certain colleges or universities because their boyfriend or girlfriend or friend didn't get accepted, or all my friends are staying back, and that can sometimes be unhealthy as well. So can you just share a little bit more, or how to kind of navigate that for our students?
Right. That is a tough question, because you guys are in a very important part of your lives where you're making these decisions. And I think, so there's this term called interdependent. So it means that you can be in relationships with others while still prioritizing yourself, your dreams, your goals, what you want out of life, because good friends, they're going to be there with you, even if you're not close to them, even if, you feel like, what am I going to do going to a college I don't know anyone at? Like, that can be really challenging. But I'm telling you, prioritize yourself. Make sure that you are making the decisions that are best for you and your goals and your future, because the most important thing you can do is invest into yourself, especially when we're talking about college and future plans. Mm-hmm. Good friends who are going to stick by you, even if you change your mind, even if you go to a different school. And it also allows you to open yourself up to new possibilities, new people in your life that you get to meet, new experiences that you'll never have. So by making those decisions based off of others, especially a partner, it could really limit you. It could really put you in a box, where college is the best time to figure out who you are, go through those challenges, learn new things, figure out what you want in life. So, I want you guys to remember that this is your journey. This is your career journey, and it's going to follow you for, it's going to set the building blocks to help you out later in life. So I want you to really prioritize yourself. Know that you're going to miss your friends. It's going to be a really tough decision to make, but I do promise it's worth it. It's worth it to make those decisions and prioritize yourself. Because long distance relationships can still happen, and you still see your friends when you come home and visit. And just because, there's a change of college doesn't mean that, we have technology. Skype them. That was lame. I'm sorry. Go on Discord or something else, but somewhere we can connect and, keep in contact, because, friendships are really important to keep around, and you don't have to be in the same place or doing the same thing to do so. My strongest friendships from middle school, are people that I haven't seen in years, but, we're achieving each other's goals and doing our best. And, now I get to see them more often because we're out of college and, living near each other. So life works out in mysterious ways. Prioritize yourself here.
Listen, I'm going to say this. This might be unpopular with some of our students, and students, I'm sorry if it's unpopular with you, if you don't like hearing it. The reality of the situation is very, very few people, marry their middle or high school sweethearts. It's just not this isn't the 50s and 60s. People are a lot more, have a lot more mobility these days. People kind of grow. If you are 16 and in love with someone, there's a lot of possibility that over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to grow in one way and your current partner is going to grow in a different way. Right. And so even if you're the perfect match for each other at 16, you might not be at 25, and that's okay. So you shouldn't make long-term decisions, right? You shouldn't
off other people.
You shouldn't plan 40 years from now about people that really might not be in your life 5 or 10 years from now, right? And so, you know, when Ms. Caulfield says, you know, prioritize yourself, you know for a fact that you're going to be with you in 20 years.
Right. Well, and there's a beauty
You don't know if these other people will be, so just be careful with
there's a
that.
beauty in knowing that a lot of people come into our lives for different reasons. And sometimes they're here for us for 2 years. Sometimes they're here with us for 10 years. And then, you know, sometimes longer. But relationships are still valuable even if they only last a year. Right. Sometimes we have exes that we wish the best for. And so it's okay to like think, especially at this age, don't be thinking marriage right now. Just think, you know, how can we continue growing together? How can we continue learning together? You know, does this can keep working? If you figure, you know, one of us wants to go out of state and one of us wants to stay in state, maybe we wish each other the best and success, because in the end, we want each other to shine. But that's still a hard decision. So yeah.
Go ahead, Mrs. Stokes. Ms. Stokes, is your hand still
Oh,
up?
I think,
Oh,
yeah, I didn't take it down. Sorry.
okay.
Thank you. But that, yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, it's tough. Relationships are not easy, but really those 5 things, right? We're communicating, we're expressing our boundaries, we have shared power, we're equal in this relationship, we're respecting one another and our differences, you know, letting people have their hobbies and the things that we don't enjoy, and self-esteem. We are lifting each other up to be the best people we can be. That's some good stuff.
That's what's up. Do you guys have any other kind of questions? I'm still looking in the chat. Just want to make sure. Any other questions?
I would like to point out something.
Go ahead.
All of this is really great information, and I will tell you, you will learn it either now or later. But this is something that you will experience and practices that you have to implement in your life. Especially some of the different practices. I'm not saying everyone is going to experience abuse or anything like that. That is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that you will have to implement some of these practices that that have been put out today, so that you can recognize the signs of abuse or recognize the signs of needing to part ways or anything on that level. So I really urge each of you to get this information and learn it now, because if you don't, you'll learn it at 40. And it's probably a lot better to learn it now at 14 than it is to learn it at 40, especially the setting boundaries conversation. So
Absolutely.
Well said.
Absolutely. Anybody else with any questions? Anybody with questions? Gonna just ask. Anybody got questions? Anybody?
So real quick, I see the last one. How do you set boundaries? Just make sure that we are telling people what we are and are not comfortable with. Hey, I'm not comfortable with you know, hugging in public or whatever it could be. You know, I prefer if we do it in a different way. Maybe we hug somewhere else. Being able to say what you are comfortable with, saying this is, you know, this is how I feel. This is, you know, please respect it. And if someone continuously doesn't respect that boundary, then they're not a good friend and they're not someone that you should be hanging out with, because that's not, it's not respect.
No, somebody said they tried
If
setting
they didn't care,
boundaries.
that's not a good friend.
Right. Sometimes people tell you the answers to the question and you ignore the answer to the question. Yeah. And this isn't a you thing. This is all of us. Sometimes we decide what we want an answer to be. And even if people give us an answer that is very clearly not what we want, we will ignore it and keep moving forward with what we're telling ourselves. So sometimes it's really important to understand the stories that we're telling ourselves as compared to, you know, the stories that other people are telling us, right? And so sometimes people tell us everything we need to know. It doesn't always make it easier to walk away, but sometimes people are being really clear with us, as clear as they can be, right? You know, it just kind of happens that way sometimes. Right. But so keep that in mind too. Watch that stuff. Like sometimes people will let you know that they're not interested, and sometimes people will let you know they're not interested, or they have some other plans, and they'll try to do it in a way that they aren't blunt, because they don't want to, because they're still thinking, well, I don't want to like crush this person's spirit, but at the same time, I'm saying no often. Like I'm saying no 3 or 4 times, but I'm not like cussing you out, right? Sometimes people will tell you, and so you need to just pay attention and say, oh, okay, I think, let me move on and do something different. Yeah, so want to make sure I say that we got to pay attention. Oh wait, somebody just sent me okay, somebody just sent me not in the chat, they sent me an actual text message. Well, text it to me quickly and I will ask your question. Not gonna say your name.
Yeah, we might need to head off soon. I'll take one more.
Yes, so I'll do this last one. They said they were trying to type it in the chat, but it wasn't, they couldn't do it in the chat. Oh, they just said, it's really difficult for them, but how do you deal with rejection? Like how do you face rejection?
That's a great question. Such a mature question. We face rejection all the time. And that's just a part of life, unfortunately. People are going to tell us no, and that's going to hurt. It's going to sting. Feelings are going to come up when we get rejected. We're going to feel like we're not good enough. We're going to feel like, no one cares about me. And that's a really strong emotion. So first, honor that. It's okay to be hurt when someone tells you no. It's okay to be, feeling let down. But it's also really important to respect when someone tells us no. Sometimes it has nothing to do with us. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with the other person and how they're feeling and, what their preferences are, or they could have a million reasons why they're doing this rejection that has nothing to do with you. So try not to take it personal. Don't let it get you down too hard, because the best thing about rejection, it gives you another chance to find out what's next. And that right opportunity will come your way if you keep trying. Rejection is a part of life. And so always make sure to keep trying. Respect when someone tells you no, but let's say you're asking someone on a date, they tell you no, okay, I get it. There are other people out there that do want me. So don't let it discourage you too much. Yeah, just keep trying.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this amazing call, Ms. Caulfield. Like I am, you did a great job, and I really appreciate all of the students that are on. I told Ms. Caulfield earlier that I don't really show the students because y'all are so bad about keeping y'all cameras on, but it's okay. We understand. But I want to sincerely thank you for your time tonight. It might be a conversation that we do need to have again, at some point soon. So I'm glad that we're connected with you now, and we'll make sure that we stay connected with you. Students, I put in the chat a link to the evaluation. Please make sure that you do that. If you have future questions, obviously you can reach out to our staff, but also I will make sure that I send out some of the helpline information that the Partners Against Domestic Violence office has. I'll make sure I send that to all of you students as well, because we all just want you guys to have what you need and be as healthy and whole as possible. So we want to make sure that we kind of give you the resources that you need. So thank you again, Ms. Caulfield. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the recording so that we can let Ms. Caulfield get on with her pre-Valentine with her it's almost Valentine's Day.
I love it. Thank you again for everyone and your thoughtful questions. This was a great night. And yeah, thank you guys so much. Have a good night.
Absolutely. Have a good night. Once I can find my button to cut off the recording, I'll just crap this out later. Okay, there we go.
Mr.